Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Estonia once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. So we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good few times before. It's been about 2 years though since I last did a review from these guys, and I would say they're best known for their big high alcohol beers, and this one is certainly not going to be any different from that. But the beer we're looking at today is a style that I very much enjoy. It's not one that we get to review on the channel all that often, and this beer does have a little bit of a touch of the motherland for me as well, a wee bit of a Scottish touch. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Keila, which is to the southwest of Tallinn, the capital city in the north of the country, and we're going to have a look at another beer from Lehe Pruulikoda. So this particular beer is called My Heart's in the Highlands. It comes in at 21% ABV, so needless to say, this thing is a bit of a monster, and this one is a peated ale. So yeah, this should be really quite interesting actually. I forget which shop in Estonia that I bought this one at, but this is a beer that I bought when I went over there for my good friend Einar's wedding, and I actually forgot that I had it. I found it in a box in my cupboard, and I thought, you know, I really need to review this one because I was just in the mood for something big and smoky. It has been too long. But yeah, definitely cool to return to Leia, of course, as well. The last beer we reviewed from these guys was the Singularity, which is their big 18% Imperial Stout, and that thing was a monster, but a beautiful, beautiful beer. So yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Lehe Pruulikoda before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer based on the geography-based tagging system. Just go to the search bar, put your hometown, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever you want in there, and if I've reviewed beers from your local area, they will pop up. Remember as well that you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries, and you will find this one in the Estonian playlist. And I do need to make sure that I get some more Estonian beers for the channel going forward, because they've got a really, really good beer scene over there. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then and chat a little bit about Lehe Pruulikoda then. So, as I've mentioned to you already, this brewery is from Keila in Harjumaa county in Estonia, which is to the southwest of the capital Tallinn in the northwestern part of the country. So the brewery was originally founded back in 2013 by Tarmo and Kristel Tali. So Tarmo had worked for many years in the IT sector, but he homebrewed alongside, while Kristel has a background in business, and she was really keen to test out her skills with a new type of business and a different industry. So during his homebrewing days, Tarmo was really interested in craft beer because of all the different yeast strains, malts and hops and things that could be used. He was just fascinated by all these relationships that existed in the chemistry of beer. But apparently when he was homebrewing, he was constantly asked by his friends when his beers would be available in bars and shops, and this really kind of encouraged him and made him want to brew beers professionally, and so he decided to go for it. But he says that the beers he brews are just ones that he would like to drink himself. But they're currently based in an industrial state in Keila, and they've gradually just built up the brewery over the past few years, and they've now got a total capacity of around 300,000 litres of beer per year. And these guys are actually one of the bigger by volume craft producers in Estonia, if memory serves me correctly. In 2019 though, Tarmo and Kristel decided that they wanted to withdraw from the company and return to the IT industry, and so they sold Lehe Pruulikoda to Tanel Nurmiots, who is the owner of the Uba ja Hummel shop in Tallinn, which was founded originally back in 2017, or 2014, sorry, and then from 2017 they actually started home brewing a little bit and gypsy brewing their beers. So yeah, I don't know if they are still doing that, of course, but you can check out my out and about video that I did at Uba ja Hummel back in, I want to say, 2020, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, awesome beer shop up by the water in the northern part of Tallinn, definitely worth checking out. But yeah, it's the guys behind Uba ja Hummel who are now behind Lehe Pruulikoda, of course, and like I say, a very well respected brewery, mainly known for their big high alcohol beers. The Singularity Imperial Stout is the one that really stood out to me, but they have got various other things in there as well that are definitely worth checking out. As of November 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 155 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and I believe this is the 4th or 5th review that I've done from them here on the channel. So I will need to have a look and see what other things we can get from these guys, especially if they've got some Scotch ales and some barley wines and things like that. If memory serves me correctly, I did see those when I was there, but I wasn't able to bring those back home with me, of course. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Lehe Pruulikoda for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Untappd page to learn a little bit more about all of the different beers that they've done. Or you can check out some of my other reviews, of course. And I guess if you want to buy some of these beers, then the best place to look is the Harjumaa website. So I'll try and put the link to that in the video description for you below. And incidentally, for those of you that don't speak Estonian, me included, but Harjumaa translates to beans and hops, if I remember correctly. So yeah, they sell some very nice coffee and some very nice beers in that shop, and it is a cool place to go and check out. Like I said, check out my out and about video that I did there back a couple of years ago. But yeah, let's get on and actually have a look at this beer itself. So yeah, as I mentioned to you at the start of this beer review, this one is a single malt peated ale. It didn't really say all that much about it on the website, of course, but yeah, it should be a bit of a monster. You can see there that it just has this kind of hill thing on the side, which is pretty cool. But yeah, wherever I wander, wherever I rove, the hills of the Highlands forever I love. So yeah, quite a nice little rhyme there. I don't know what that's from, but I do recognise that, and that's probably Scottish people watching this video will be horrified that I don't recognise that off the top of my head, but there we go. But yeah, just to let you see on the side there is the Lehe Pruulikoda symbol, and there you can see my heart in the Highlands. There are a few new versions of this beer from what I understand. There is one that's been aged in a sherry cask, which I think would be quite interesting to try. So I will need to see if I can get a hold of one of those at some point in the future. But yeah, you can see on the side of the bottle as well, it says Eesti Keskitöölu, if I've pronounced that correctly. And this, of course, is the mark of Estonian craft beer, which you'll find on quite a few beers that you'll get from the country. But there you go. There is the bottle cap on this one. I think the light behind me is just reflecting off that a wee bit, but I think you can see it well enough. 330ml bottle, this one. As we said earlier, this one is 21%. This is the strongest beer that I've had from Lehe Pruulikoda so far. I would be curious to know whether they actually have any stronger ones than this. I know that the sherry cask version of this, though, is 21.9%. But yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. Let's open it up and see what we're going to get. Yeah, a 21% single malt peated ale. Not often you come across that, but yeah, I think this will be pretty awesome, but also pretty ridiculous at the same time. So yeah, as I've told you in many reviews before, my whole love of craft beer started off with the Bamberg Rauch beers, thanks to my friend Daniel. And so from there, things just, you know, we got into Dunkels, got into Doppelbocks, all the big brown sugary things, Scotch ales as well, of course. And yeah, whenever I get the chance to try a smoked beer, I always jump at it. But for me, the main difference between the German Rauch malt from the likes of Weirmann in Bamberg and the Scotch peated malt is I always find the kind of peated malt is a little bit more kind of grassy and earthy, if you like, in its smokiness, whereas the German Rauch malt is a bit more sort of meaty, if you like. So yeah, we'll need to see what the peat in this one is like, because of course peat can vary from country to country. Swedish peat, for example, I've had that in many Swedish whiskies, is quite different from Scottish peat actually. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, we've got this beer out and into the glass. So if I shine the light through this one, you can see it's actually a very, very kind of rich, dark amber colour, this one. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera, but there is quite a wee bit of sediment visible in this one. I think I have had this beer for maybe about a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. As I say, it was one that I just forgot about, but at 21%, you know, you can't, really do not think this beer will have gone off at all. But yeah, lovely, kind of dark, sort of natural mahogany, slightly chestnutty colour, this one, or you could describe it as a very, very dark amber. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones just coming up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look very nice. I say the head, but I should say the surface, because there is nothing visible on the top of this one. But at 21% ABV, that's to be expected, to be quite honest with you. Obviously, this beer might just be a little touch too cold, but it'll warm up over time, I'm sure. But yeah, this beer looks pretty good. I don't know how well you can see the sediment in this one, but there has been quite a little bit. It has been cellared quite well, but of course it's all natural, so we don't need to care sort of too much about that. But yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the appearance of this one. You can see it does have a good little bit of kind of haziness and murkiness to it, but yeah, it does certainly look the part. So yeah, let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see how we get on. Very, very curious about this beer, as I've mentioned already. Oh yeah. This thing is going to be an absolute monster. You can just tell right away. But aroma wise, this is absolutely beautiful. I get the feeling from the aroma this one might have been barrel aged on something, but yeah, as I say, the the thing with this beer was when I actually searched for it on Untappd and things like that, it didn't say anything, and I tried looking on Lehe's website for the original one, and yeah, I couldn't find it. They only had the new one, which was sherry barrel aged. But yeah, I get a feeling from the aroma that this one could also have been sherry barrel aged. It certainly has a wee bit of that vibe to it, but regardless, it's a beautiful, beautiful smelling beer. But as you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a sucker for pretty much anything that's got a bit of smoke in it. Absolutely love it. But yeah, I mean, the impression of this beer, just as a first basic impression, it's got a nice woodiness to it. You've got the big, sweet malt base in there. You've got the peat with it. You've got a little bit of dried fruit. And there is just a tiny little bit of kind of hoppy character left to this one. Of course, when you barrel age beers, you're going to lose quite a little bit of. You are going to lose a little bit of the hoppy character over time, but yeah, you always get wee remnants of it. But yeah, let's break this aroma down for you and just describe it that wee bit more before we taste the thing. I could sit and smell this all day, but the whole point is to taste the beer and describe it. But yeah, could quite happily sit and just smell this all day. I wish my house smelled of this. Just peat, love it. So anyway, backbone of this beer, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of smooth, okay, kind of almost beechwoody character. I would be, it does say it's single malt right enough. I do, but it does have a wee bit of that almost German Rauch malty meatiness to it. But yeah, backbone of the beer, lovely kind of smooth, slightly dry, woody character in there. As I say, it reminds me a little bit of beechwood. You absolutely have a good little bit of bready character to this one. You can smell a little bit of kind of wholemeal brown bread crust in there. It's almost got a little touch of a kind of oily but still sweet rye bread character to it as well. But lots, there's a good little bit of kind of brown sugar in this one as well. You can smell that little bit of slightly toasty caramel, but a big oily sweet kind of sweet caramel to this one as well, which is really nice. But the whole thing is, of course, infused with that smoky character. Like I say, when I smell the aroma of this one, it doesn't smell quite as clean cut as Scottish peat in a sense, but maybe it's just kind of so concentrated in this compared to what you would get in whiskey, of course, because many of these whiskies are just a little bit, a few ppm per a few ppms of peat. I think you have to go to like Octomore or something like that to get this level of peat in a whiskey. But yeah, the aroma of this one, the smokiness is really quite concentrated, if you like, and I love it. I do love it, to be honest. So I think that's the reason why I'm maybe picking up this one as being a little bit more kind of like a German Rauch malt, of course. So maybe when you take the peat and concentrate it in this level, it is going to give you that kind of meaty character, because there's a lot of that in this one. You have this, you know, the thing that you get from the Maillard reactions when you cook, you know, when you just you get that little bit of brown stuff on the edge of a piece of meat or something like that. It really has a little bit of meatiness to it, this beer, which is lovely. So yeah, a little bit of roasty, toasty kind of brown sugar, and there's, as I said, big sweet kind of caramelly notes, but then that meaty, almost German Rauch malt type smokiness coming out of this beer. Absolutely lovely. But of course, on top of that, it does let you know that it's Scottish peat. You get that little bit of a more kind of grassy note and the slight earthiness in there as well. So yeah, absolutely peat. But like I say, for me, the surprising thing with this one is that I get a little bit of that, you know, almost Bamberg Rauch malty character out of this beer. It could be the kind of brown sugary notes that you're getting out of this one, but as well that are doing that. But yeah, you can tell with this beer as well. I think the presence of the kind of brown sugars tells you that this is quite a long wort boil. You do, the more that you smell of this beer, you can smell it's kind of caramelized and big and thick like. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together in the malty side of things is absolutely lovely. You get a little touch of, there's a wee touch of nuttiness to it. There's a wee touch of there's a wee touch of nuttiness. There's a little touch of you know, kind of oaky vanilla type notes come out of it as well, but those are very, very minimal. The whole thing is dominated by the peat smoke, as you would expect. But yeah, this is absolutely lovely. As I mentioned earlier, you know, this beer is about 2 years old. I would think most of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this. I do suspect this one has a little bit of barrel aging to it. I could be wrong. So obviously that's another thing that's going to mean the hoppy character will drop out of it a little bit. But I certainly get little remnants of a slight earthiness. You know, there's a bit of smooth earthiness in there. You've also got a little bit of floral and grassy character. I would say mainly grassy, and those are of course quite oily, which is in tune with the overall nature of the beer. But yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice in that sense too. The hoppy character just adds a wee bit of depth to it. Now, when it comes to the fruity side of things, yeah, the fruity side of things is quite interesting, because it is mainly a kind of dry fruity character that you get out of this. There's a lot of oily pear in there. You've definitely got, I get almost a little touch of a kind of datey note out of this too, which is quite interesting. So certainly some sultanas, yeah, pear, dates, sultanas, these kind of dried fruits. There is a little tiny hint. There's a little tiny hint of a slightly red fruity note to this one, and I'm hoping I don't think it will be oxidation, but sometimes if you've got a wee bit of oxidation, you can get just a little bit of that red fruity character. I'd be very curious to know what hop they used with this one. I mean, if they used like an old school English hop or something like that, you know, a bit of East Kent Golding or something, or maybe they just used like one of the German nobles. I really don't know. As I say, that's one of the things with Lehe, and if I remember this right with their other recipes too, they don't tell you what hops and, you know, what malt varieties and things they put into their beer. But yeah, this one, I would really love to know what hop they've used with this, because it gives you that nice kind of smoothness, almost like a bit of a German or a Slovenian noble hop maybe. But then yeah, you do just get that little touch of kind of red fruity note out of it. But beautiful, beautiful smelling beer, this one. A few surprises, a few kind of surprise subtleties in it, but yeah, beautiful smelling thing, I have to say. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for the aroma, and that we should get on and taste this one. So yeah, this one is the My Hearts in the Highlands, a single malt peated ale at 21% ABV from Lehe Pruulikoda in Keila in Harjumaa in the northwest of Estonia. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers, and as they say in Estonia, tervisex. Big shout out to my friend Einar, of course, as well. Slange. Oh yeah. I'm going to say straight away, this is one of these beers that's actually really quite different in its in what you get from the flavour in some ways. than how it would turn out in the aroma. I was expecting this to be, you know, to have a good little bit more kind of sweetness and things like that to it, you know, a bit more brown sugar and stuff. But it really is. It's actually a very, very straight shooting beer, I have to say. You know, when they say single malt peated ale, it really is that. It really is that. It's almost just like, I was thinking just from the aroma that this one would maybe have a little bit more kind of, as I say, a little bit more kind of bread and all this to it. But it's actually, it really is a very, very straight shooting beer, this one. It's nice and I like it. This flavour profile for me is really interesting. But it's it is almost in some ways like a sort of, could you say, a low ABV whiskey, kind of something like that. But yeah, let's have another wee sip of this and see what we have. Yeah, it's interesting, this one, because you do get a wee bit of complexity in the fruity side of things and the sort of hoppy side of things. The malt itself does give you a wee bit of complexity, but as I say, the aroma's got a hell of a lot of complexity to it, but the actual malt base in this beer is a lot more straight shooting. It's quite a surprise with this beer, I have to say. Yeah, I like this one. What I will say about it though is that it's definitely a share, and I'm glad I'm going to share this one with my friend actually, because yeah, this thing is an absolute monster. But yeah, let's try and break this down a wee bit for you and just describe it in depth. So, middle third of your palate with this beer, you do get a nice little bit of you get a lovely kind of almost like dry, woody backbone to the beer, and it is a bit more, as I say, like a kind of beech wood. It doesn't strike me as being particularly oaky or anything, but yeah, the backbone of this beer really is sort of like a dry, woody note. Above that, you do get a little hint of kind of bread crust. What I will say about this, the malt base in this one, is that the middle of your palate, it's actually quite kind of, it's almost quite thin in a way. I was expecting a big, as I say, oily, syrupy beer, this one, but the malty side of it's actually kind of quite thin. Although, as I say, the smoky flavours are really big and beastly in this one, but you know, you always expect from a big, heavy alcohol beer for it to have a good chunk of body in the middle third of your palate. This one doesn't have that, which is kind of interesting. The thing is, when you first take it in, it does feel kind of big and oily and slick and things. But then, yeah, it goes in and it very quickly transitions and gives you the aftertaste. And so, yeah, the flavour in the middle of your palate, there's that dry wood, little touch of kind of, you do have a little touch of like a toasty bread crust in there, and a wee bit of like a wholemeal or rye bread above that. But as I say, that flavour is very kind of condensed and very sort of squashed together in a way. And then on top of that, you do have a little element of, you do have a wee bit of a toasty brown, you've got a big circle there in the middle third of your palate, you've got a toasty brown sugar, and then you've also got a more kind of oily, caramelised brown sugar in this one. Maybe even a little bit leathery. So that does tell me, I think, that this beer has had quite a long wort boil. I mean, as I always say, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise. If you do it long enough, you get a leathery character in there. So the brown sugary notes that you get, that middle circle and that circle in the middle of your palate, you've got the leathery brown sugars, you've got the so yeah, you've got the leathery brown sugars in there. You have a more treacle of molasses is maybe not much. You've got highly caramelised caramel in there, and you've maybe got a tiny little hint of biscuit or something as you move out toward the extremities of the palate. But as I say, under that, you've got, pardon me, that bit of brown bread, the bread crust, and then the kind of woody characters. But infused into all of that is just this big peaty smoke, and that sort of mellows out the further into the aftertaste that you go with this beer. This thing is absolutely a sipper though. You want to share this with maybe 4 or 5 friends, because this thing is an absolute monster. Yeah. I've got a feeling this might well be the strongest beer I've ever reviewed on the channel, but I'm not 100% certain about that, but it very well could be. But toward the front of that middle third of the palate, the other thing I would say you start to get out of this beer is a little bit, you do start to get a little bit of nuttiness to it, but the peaty smoky characters come out a bit further back on that middle third of your palate, so you can feel that there's a wee touch of there is a wee touch of kind of dryness in there, so you feel in the middle, well, between the middle and back third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of bready build up in there, and the kind of smokiness, the peaty smoky character in there really kind of builds up, I would say. But on the back third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit of the woodiness there as well. That gets even drier. The bread crusty character that I was talking about is a little bit more grainy. As I always say, grainy, the more grainy and bitter flavours come out further back on the palate, the sweeter ones come out further forward. So you've got a little bit of that in there. You've got a wee bit of the kind of bread crusty character as well. That's a bit drier. You've got a little bit of a slightly taller layer from the kind of brown wholemeal rye bread, whatever, in there as well. Then above all of that, you've got this really airy, you do have this really kind of airy, kind of just yeasty ester coming out of the beer, but the peaty smoky character is kind of embedded within those bready qualities in at the back in the back third of the palate there, so you can feel all of it there. So like I was saying earlier, the back third of the palate, incidentally, is a lot taller. The flavour is a lot taller there, and it just, as you move forward into the middle third of the palate, it just squashes down and condenses quite a lot. We can definitely say that. But yeah, the smoky character that you get out of this one, it's almost got a little bit of, what you'll notice with this beer is that underneath everything, the further into the aftertaste that you go, you get an almost kind of charred quality to this one, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, it's definitely that more earthy and grassy Scottish peat rather than the German Rauchmalt meaty type quality that we talked about earlier. So this is why I was saying this beer flavour wise diverges quite a lot from the from what the aroma gives you. So yeah, interesting thing there. But like I say, the smoky character, the charredness is sitting in the base, but the earthy and grassy characters within the smoke here are very are very Scottish and very peaty. So it's interesting, that one. It's just interesting how much the aroma varied from the actual flavour that we get out of the beer. But I think we've said everything we need to about the middle and the back third of the palate in this beer. Let's go to the kind of hoppy side of things with this one. So back corners of the palate, as I said, you get a little bit of earthy character there, and as you move further forward from that, that earthiness does spread forward a little bit. There's a little touch of a kind of herbal note with this one, and then you've also got a nice little bit of kind of floral aromaticity as well. So yeah, the way this beer goes together on the hoppy side of things is quite nice. As I said earlier, this is this probably is not going to be a very heavily hopped beer. I would very much doubt that it's got a lot of hop in it, but most of it is dropped out anyway. You can kind of feel that, but there are little remnants of things there. But as you move forward toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's got a little bit of a more kind of floral and spicy note to it. But round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy and things like that. There's a little tiny touch of like an almost zesty character there, but the grassiness is, and the floral note in this one is a little bit drier. So yeah, the way that this beer goes together gets a big thumbs up from me. I really like this. So yeah, flavour wise on the hoppy side of things, it's pretty good. Let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the kind of fruity notes that this beer has. So front border between middle and front third of your palate, then I would say you've got a little bit of bready build up in there, a wee touch of bread crust, but a kind of wholemeal brown bready note, and then the base of that front third of your palate is mainly kind of woody, and then you've also Just got a little bit of bready smoothness in there as well. And on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at that. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is actually quite similar to what we were picking up in the aroma. At the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel there's a mixture of kind of, there's like an oily pear, a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of a kind of oily pear, as I say, a little bit of a kind of sultana note underneath that, you know, dry white green grapes. Then as you move further forward, you can feel the sultana, you know, it's just move, you know, they just keep going forward into the front half of the front third of your palate there, but there's almost just a tiny little bit of like a fresh apple. There's like a kind of very slight fresh green red apple sort of thing on the front kind of tip of your palate there. It might just be the booziness out of the beer actually, and you know, this beer does have a good bit of alcohol warmth down the chest. At 21%, it's going to have that. You know, a lot of beers these days are very good at covering their alcohol, but this one, you know, kind of shows you this. This is basically like a kind of low ABV whiskey in some ways, to be honest with you. But yeah, you certainly get a wee bit of alcohol warmth down here in the chest from this one. But yeah, fruitiness, oily pear, dried sultana, maybe a very, yeah, oily pear, sultanas, and then a wee touch of like a kind of almost appley note out of this one. It's almost got a wee bit of spice to it on the very front tip of the tongue too. But yeah, this beer is an absolute monster, and as I say, very, very kind of straight shooting. The aroma is actually a good bit more complex than the flavour of the beer, but it's quite interesting to try this one. But absolutely, this is one that you should share with a couple of friends, and you know, have about 50 mils each, or something like that, or maybe have 100 mils of this beer each. But at 21%, this is one of the beers that's going to fuck your day in the best way for sure if you try and drink it all yourself. So be aware of that. But yeah, I think we've said everything we need to about the flavour of this beer. I can feel it going to my head a little bit, but let's have a wee look at the kind of fruity side of things with this one. Yeah. I say the fruity side of things. We'll have a look at the mouthfeel. Brain is not working at this point. That's what this beer does to you. Scottish malt is dangerous, as they say. But yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer, it's kind of right in the middle of the spectrum actually. I would say it's kind of mid to top end of mid-bodied. It's certainly not the heaviest and thickest of beers that I've come across. Carbonation is very, very smooth in this one. It does have a wee bit of slickness to it, but as I say, it's more of a kind of light oily slickness rather than anything else. Beyond that, in terms of IBUs, I think this is, you know, sort of 10-ish IBUs at most, probably less than that. There's not a lot of bitterness to this beer, to be honest with you. It does have a considerable dryness in the base, and that would make sense for this particular style, to be honest with you. So a good little bit of dryness there. The malt base does have a bit of graininess. There's a bit of sweetness to it, but yeah, it's almost, is it right to say that it's maybe more of a kind of savoury beer, this one, rather than anything else? That probably would make more sense. And as we said earlier, the fruits in this beer it's got a good little bit of dry fruity character to it, but they have their own sort of inherent oiliness, if that makes sense. So yeah, to be honest, I think that covers everything that we really need to say about this beer. But it has gone together really quite nicely, this one. It's a very interesting beer to try, but it's certainly an absolute monster. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. I'd be curious to try the sherry barrel-aged version of this, because the more that I drink of this one, I become less and less convinced that it's that it has been barrel-aged, to be honest with you. But whatever they've done with this one, it's a nice beer, but you know, you have to take this in small doses. The thing is a monster. So yeah, let's leave it there. This one was the My Hearts in the Highlands from Lehe Pruulikoda in Keila, to the southwest of Tallinn, the Estonian capital. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Lehe Pruulikoda as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future. But yeah, this thing was an absolute monster. Until the next time, Slàinte Scott, cheers. Check out my social media, check out Lehe Pruulikoda's social media, and we will see what we can do about more Estonian reviews very soon. Slàinte Scott, cheers, and terve sex.